I believe the ability to save our way to retirement has largely been taken away from this generation. Because of that, I think you can't play defense, you got to play offense. So I rebuilt our portfolio from the ground up and got away from a very active strategy, which is Airbnb, into a more passive strategy, which is renting people boxes of air. This is a good time to be an LP. But the reality is spring is coming, and Warren Buffett is the one that says you can't tell who's skinny dip until the tide rolls out. The people that are still able to operate over the last 2 years, everybody looks like a genius when the market's on the way up.
The views expressed in this podcast are those of the individual guests and do not reflect the opinions or recommendations of Invest Clearly. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. The appearance of a sponsor or investor on this show does not constitute an endorsement or a warning. Invest Clearly is an objective and neutral platform. Always do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions.
Clint, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate being here. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, we've known each other for some time, but before we get started, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience and that might not be familiar with Nomad or you and your journey.
Sure. My name is Clint Harris. I live in Carolina Beach, North Carolina. I'm one of the general partners with Nomad Capital. I'm 42 years old, married for 13 years. I got 2 little boys, 5 years old and 2 years old. I had a 16-year career in medical sales, implanting pacemakers and defibrillators. I liberated myself from that through investing in real estate, first single family, then multifamily, then converting to Airbnb, then building property management, and then eventually got into self-storage with my partners and started leaning into that in a big way in 2021. We started buying old Kmart buildings, converting those into climate-controlled self-storage facilities. Left medical sales in 2022. One of the 4 general partners in Nomad Capital. We've got a little over 150 million in assets under management.
Awesome. Thanks. So what motivated that shift though, before we go deeper, what motivated that shift in your career? Obviously you started kind of just investing, but why did it become a full-time thing?
So medical sales is a young man's game. It is, heart problems. I worked in cardiology. It is not Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I would put a device in someone and then that was my patient for the rest of their life. And so that means being on call, getting called up to 2 to 3 hours away in different directions at 2 to 3 in the morning, 2 to 3 nights a week. So it wears on you. And if the idea is that job has a very high ceiling in terms of income, and it's okay, well then my job is to save enough money that I can eventually retire. I believe the ability to save our way to retirement has largely been taken away from this generation. And so because of that, I think you can't play defense, you got to play offense. So that put me in to creating an off-ramp from that lifestyle. I chose real estate as the avenue by which I wanted to do that. I got to the point through Airbnb properties that I replaced my income while I was still working at the hospital. And I realized I had done it wrong because I was just focused on the financial component. And I should have been focused on the financial time and location independence component, because those 3 things together create an independence of purpose, which is what my wife and I are looking for in our lives. And if I want to meaningfully change the amount of time I spend with my kids and my future grandkids, I chose real estate as the avenue by which I was going to do that. So I rebuilt our portfolio from the ground up and got away from a very active strategy, which is Airbnb, into a more passive strategy, which is renting people boxes of air, which is self-storage. And then the scale that comes with that is syndication. And then the next step from there was self-storage conversion, buying old vacant big box retail, converting it to storage. But it was to get to the point of breaking the cycle of trading time for money.
Got it. So you'd say does that shape your approach today? Because obviously you're in a more active role in storage today.
Correct. Yeah, it's a great question, right? And that's a great point. Our group is called Nomad Capital. And a nomad is somebody that goes where they want, when they want, and does what they want. But the reality is I can't turn it off. I'm a student of the game and I love it.
Right.
We still encourage everybody in the company to travel and work remotely whenever they can, as much as they can. I'm doing this because it's the love of the game, but I still live on an island at the beach. I go offshore a lot. I go spearfishing. I shoot a lot of grouper. I catch a lot of lobsters, and I live the life that I want. And I don't know that I would ever not do this with the option to not do it. I do this because I love the people I do it with and I love what I'm doing. But I find that when you are working on something, it's a lot more fun when it's a choice to be working than when you have to get up every morning, put on your scrubs and be at the hospital by 6 a.m.
Got it. So like you hear work optional a lot, right? You're talking about location independence and so on and so forth. It's like it's optionality for you. Like
Yeah,
you get
choice, right?
Yeah.
Freedom of choice, freedom of purpose. Like if you have time, financial, and location independence together, that creates an independence of purpose that is going to look different for everyone, right? It might be, hopefully it's something that's good for your family, good for the community around you, but it could be like, I want to go sit on a beach and be lazy, or I want to go ski and I want to go fishing. Maybe it means I want to build something. I want to be involved with community service. I want to be available when a family member gets sick and needs me, right? That looks different for everybody. Money is not that important to me. What is important to me is dying with a giant stack of pictures of cool things I did in beautiful places with people that I love. What money and time and location independence creates is the option to do that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions and kind of like the financial freedom world is like that it's all about kind of getting to this place where you're like sitting on a beach. And the reality is a lot of people would actually do the thing that they're currently doing just optionally, like working really hard optionally versus like disengaging. That's an interesting, that's a subject for another podcast. Maybe we should talk about that some other time.
Listen, I live at the beach and I sit on the beach a lot, and I would still rather be here today doing this. This is more fun.
Yeah, without a doubt. I get it. So in your role in Nomad, obviously this podcast, primarily our listeners are GPs and LPs, but primarily LPs. Like we're talking about trust, we're talking about transparency. In your role in Nomad, talk to me a little bit about how you establish and maintain trust.
So a lot of our early investors are physicians that I worked with, especially on our earlier deals. They're electrophysiologists, cardiologists, surgeons, pulmonologists, or ER doctors that I worked with. And a lot of those guys, you're not meeting somebody new and going into heart surgery with them. There's a lot that comes with that from a technical acumen side of things to build and earn the trust required to go into procedures where the patients are actively trying to pass away, right? That you're fighting hard to keep these people alive. And it takes a lot to earn the trust to do that. So that trust really transferred well when I started investing in real estate. And then over a period of, I invested in real estate for 14 out of the 16 years I was doing that. So eventually when we got to the point of inviting other people on our deals, it was a no-brainer because of what we were doing together. Right. And from there, that trust transfers about once to the people that they know, like, and trust, but eventually you're going outside of that. And the way that you maintain that moving forward is, first of all, you have people in the company that have integrity, which all of my coworkers and partners do. And then you have to set a standard of what normal communication is going to look like. And that means during the good, the bad, and the ugly, the ups and the downs. It's not about when bad things happen. It's about how you deal with it. And sometimes the right way to deal with things is to stick your face in the fan when you have to and be like, we got this wrong. This is what happened. This is what the market did. And this is what we're going to do about it. Going radio silent is the worst thing you can possibly do, right? Mm-hmm. The way that you earn trust is not when things are going great. The way you earn trust is when things are not going great and you try your hardest to do the right thing. That's how you earn that trust. And usually that can only come with time. So we have that because we have a lot of relationships. And my partners brought a ton of relationships to the table as well. They've been doing construction and development since the 90s. So because of that, it's kind of blossomed out of that. But then we've got 4 general partners. Now we got 17 employees and some interns. There has to be a culture, which our founders, my partner, Eric and Levi Hemingway, father and son team, did a great job of building a culture of honesty, integrity, and transparency. That's paramount. That has to be communicated. And then you have to have that clear communication channel and meet the expectations that you set for your investor base.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think the emphasis on transparency when things are not going to plan is really, really important. That you're right. That is when trust is built. And I've had this conversation with a lot of GPs where there's a hesitance sometimes to communicate when things are going poorly, even when you're doing things to overcome bad circumstances, right?
Sure.
Because everybody gets into this game because they're good at winning. Right. And so like anytime things start going sideways, it doesn't feel very good. That is the most important time to be communicating in ahead of when someone sees that something's going, like when your LPs finds out something is going sideways. The last thing you want is them figuring it out before you communicated it. Now for Nomad, I mean, you guys are doing conversions, which is not always straightforward. So how do you
Never.
think about, right? Yeah, exactly. So how do you think about transparency and investor communications on like complex projects like that, where, you
Yeah.
have a plan, but you get in and something not exactly like it looked like on the schematic or whatever?
For me, I like to be upfront about it. Part of our plan is knowing that nothing is going to turn out the way that we expect it to upfront. Ground up development is significantly easier than conversion projects. If I'm doing ground up development, it's going to be the cost of the land, $125 a square foot for the construction, and it's going to take 2 to 3 years to do the entitlement, permitting, engineering, construction. Then we have an empty facility and we have to fill it up. That is easy compared to buying an old textile mill, grocery store, warehouse, boot factory, carpet factory, Kmart, you name it, furniture store, and converting that to climate controlled storage, or adding a mezzanine and building a second floor, or being responsible for every use that property has ever had, knowing we have to get the same certificate of occupancy you get for residency, which means 125 pounds per square foot of pressure, fork rate lifted for each floor. We have to be responsible if there was ever an oil change station in there or battery acid from 80 years ago.
Right.
It always has challenges, structural engineering challenges, and everything else. We know that. The way we control that is vertical integration, which means we're finding the deals, mostly off market, but some on market. We are raising the capital. We are doing the construction. We are doing the property management. If you're relying on other people to do those components, anytime you have a change order can add 3 to 6 months if you're using a third-party contractor. That could be $60,000 a month in interest reserves.
Right.
The best thing to do is over-communicate upfront. We will run into challenges. When we do, we will navigate them quickly and we will be nimble because we have the vertical integration to do that. And at this point, there's not much that we haven't seen. And I try to be the first person to tell people that if you don't already have them, I really want you to establish goals for yourself and for your family with your wife, husband, spouse, partner, whatever it may be.
Right.
You figure out what your goals are. Don't let me tell you what they should be. You figure them out in terms of cash flow, liquidity, equity, growth, depreciation, whatever they may be. You figure out those goals. If those goals do not line up with what we are offering, then you shouldn't do it. And if you can't figure that out up front, I will try to be the first one to tell you that you should not invest with us, and I will point you someplace else. Because at the end of the day, if 3 years from now you're disgruntled, I'm still the one that has to take that phone call.
Right.
So the reality is, I would rather you find the right investment for you and your family. There's plenty of deals. There's plenty of money. The trick is getting the right investors with the right business plan. That's how we all have success together. And if we don't, and we're putting a square peg into a round hole, there's going to be friction there. It's worth it to do the upfront work with the honesty and transparency, good, bad, and ugly, to keep the wrong money out and let the right money in. Because
Sure.
it's, that 80-20 rule. It's more like the 97-3 rule. If you get the wrong investors in, those 3 investors could be 97% of your problems, and the other 97 are 3%.
That's where that headaches come in. I mean,
Right.
we're working with a lot of GPs on this, or I'm working with a lot of GPs on this. Just in terms of like making sure that alignment is part of your process, right? It is
Sure.
perfectly fine to qualify people out of investing with you. What you don't want is a misaligned investor, because that is, like you said, where all your headaches are going to come from. It's going to put you back in the situation you were in before with where you're talking about with medical sales. You've got these heart surgery patients, and now they're clients for life, and it's probably not all good when they call you.
Dude, they're coding on you, right?
They're coding on you, right? Yeah, you don't want to create misaligned investors. So back to the investments themselves. Obviously, you're creating long-term value here, but how are you balancing risk and opportunity to ensure long-term value?
The basis is really what helps up front. Like the first Kmart we bought in 2020 was 87,000. This is anecdotal. It's one project, but I'm just as an example of the whole, right? It's 87,000 square foot Kmart in Reidsville, North Carolina. We bought the building for $1.5 million with the land, parking lot, and everything else. We put 2.5 into converting it. We're into the project for 4. Stabilized valuation is 9. Oh, this makes sense. If we just wanted to build that cinder block shell, at the time, it would have cost us $6 million. That cost of materials is probably $8 million now.
Mm-hmm.
But that creates wiggle room because we are not doing ground up development. We are doing conversions. We can do it for less than half the cost of new development, and we can do it about a third of the time. So that creates the value delta that has allowed us to continue cranking out projects during what has been considered the last 3 years has been considered the hardest 3 years of commercial real estate out of the last 35. It's been a bloodbath, right? So
Sure.
that creates the value delta. We buy a project for 2 to 3 million. We'll put 2 to 3 million into it. We'll be into it for 4 to 6. It's going to price somewhere in the 12 to 15 range. Then we can do usually a cash out refinance after we stabilize. We're moving towards some projects that we know we're going to sell because new self-storage development has really dried up over the last year, and especially the next 2 years. It's projected to be down 15% this year, 17 next year, and 18 the year after that. That's new self-storage product hitting the market. So we're heading towards an area where we see there's $20 billion that have come together in the last 12 to 18 months for self-storage acquisition. So as we're looking at a high demand, low supply environment in the 2027, 2028 timeframe with compressed cap rates, that's probably when you're looking at a partial portfolio liquidation. So a lot of times we do the refinance forever hold because we want the cash flow that creates real estate nomads. Sometimes we just launched a new deal last night, and sometimes we know it's a project we're going to sell it 5 or 7 years.
Got it.
And we try to be upfront about that. Let me add one more thing I think could be valuable for your LPs.
Sure.
This is a good time to be an LP. A lot of people feel differently about that because especially with multifamily over the last couple of years, it's been really hard. We've seen a lot of capital calls, a lot of paused distributions. We've seen social medias go dark. We've seen people disappear. All of it. It's bad. But the reality is spring is coming. And Warren Buffett is the one that says you can't tell who's skinny dip until the tide rolls out. The people that are still able to operate over the last 2 years, everybody looks like a genius when the market's on the way up, right? Everybody looks smart. Right now, there are people that have been exposed and there are deals that have been exposed. And we've had hardships too, right? All of our projects stopped leasing up as fast as they were supposed to because the housing market froze. It's a good time to look at operators and ask very tactful questions about how they navigated these really challenging times, what the communication looked like, and how they handled a really bad or poor situation.
Yeah.
Because the people that are still operating right now are a different breed. And if you can pull it off during the last couple of years, that's a foxhole guy that I probably want to go to war with.
Sure.
And I think for an LP perspective, you can't take your foot off the gas when it comes to due diligence and everything that you need to do. But coming through a tough time, I think is a much better time to be an LP, choosing partners than right before you go through a tough time.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, and we're seeing that in the reviews. Like we're seeing, even when things are challenging, GPs who are doing a good job communicating and laying out their strategy. You're seeing it qualitatively. People saying like, "Hey, the distributions have stopped, but like there's been great communication or whatever." And so I think communication is key in that environment. I think, like you said, for LP, I mean, let's just call it what it is. People have been investing at the height of the market. There's about to be an opportunity to invest at a discount potentially.
Sure.
So that's by definition a good time to be an LP.
Yeah.
And there will be kind of separation of the wheat from the chaff, kind of, to put it bluntly. And
absolutely.
Where what you're talking about. Now, do you think that your perspective on kind of nomad capitalism, or creating nomads, there's like a long-term value play there, like long-term cash flow? Does that must impact the way you think about purchasing deals and kind of how you underwrite risk?
Right. Like the genetics of a self-storage facility lend very well to a long-term hold because it's pandemic, inflation, recession resistant. Nothing's proof, right? But it's not recession proof, but it's recession resistant. And what we've seen is everybody's on a month-to-month lease. Right now, house sizes have been getting progressively smaller with new development over the last 5 years. Young people are not buying, they're renting. Renters use more storage than homeowners because when you buy, you have a basement, a garage, an attic, depending on where you are. When you rent, it's based upon square footage. You're going to rent a 2-bedroom condo for $1,800 a month when you can rent a 1-bedroom for 13 and then use the storage as the extension of the garage. So the product has to change because the consumer has changed a lot. The millennial population is now 36% of the population, 34% of the population, but they use 38% of storage. When you think of storage, it's not the low slung metal building on the side of the highway anymore with baby boomers putting bulky furniture and Christmas decorations in there twice a year. It's a consumer that has lifestyle items that's in there they're in there an average of more than 2.5 times per month. They're there at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, grabbing their snowboard and their bibs and getting out of town, or their mountain bike, or their kayak, or their fly rod and their waders, or their winter clothes. These are lifestyle items. So if you're doing storage these days, it needs to be safe, secure, well-lit, easy access, climate controlled. It has to be centrally located. So you think about an old Kmart and the residential density of 3 miles around there, and all those people used to drive there to buy their home goods. They don't do that anymore. But it still is a good place for those same people to drive back to the same building to put stuff back inside of it. But the way they're using it is different. QR codes on the door, touchscreen kiosks, availability to get in anytime. The consumer is changing, so the product has to change. What does not change are the fundamentals of very inflation resistant, because everybody's on a month-to-month lease. It will always be cheaper than paying for that same space in your housing. We have a ton of businesses that have shut down and are now using storage as a micro distribution point over the last couple of years. So the fundamentals of the consumer, believe it or not, are actually making it more attractive. People worry about oversaturation, and in pockets, that's a real issue. But if you think about where we focus, the downtown of a small secondary or tertiary market across the Southeast, buying an old Kmart, it's going to be real hard for you to find the 5 to 7 acres to build a competing store close by. And even if you do, it's taking you 2.5 to 3 years to break ground all the way to CO. So we have speed. We also have half the cost basis, and then long-term hold, recapitalization through refinance. We know that there are properties we are going to sell. We're actually selling one of our first Kmart conversions 7 days from now, next week, July 15th, for whenever this comes out, for just a little over $9.5 million. That was one of the first ones that we did. The reality is most of them, we want to hold them long-term. Yeah. And a lot of investors don't want that. So if you don't want that, I'm not your guy. Don't invest with us, and you shouldn't do it. Right. It's a bad play for you.
Sure.
So it may not be bad, but it's certainly bad for what your goals are. So because of that, we have a lot of them we want to hold long-term. And that it has to be an investor that has that mindset on those projects.
This episode of the Invest Clearly podcast is brought to you by Scale IR. If you're raising capital, you know the hardest part isn't just generating leads, it's turning those leads into committed investors. That's where Scale IR comes in. Scale IR transforms your investor engagement process with their proven solutions that optimize lead qualification, accelerate investor conversations, and drive higher conversions. From seamless CRM integration and intelligent workflows to expert investor qualification specialists who handle your initial discovery calls, Scale IR gives your team freedom to focus on closing deals. If you're ready to scale your investor relations and capital raising effectiveness, visit scaleir.com to learn more and book your strategy call today. Scale IR. Engage smarter, convert faster.
So do you feel like because you're, creating alignment and most of your investors then likely do want long holds, you said earlier, like obviously your deals are not immune to what's been going on in the marketplace, right? Like
sure,
there's interest rate issues, there's value issues, there's housing, all that impacts you a little bit. So theoretically, I would presume that your deals aren't exactly hitting pro forma all the time.
Yeah, we've been behind on quite a few of them in terms of lease up. Like self-storage leased up at about 3% occupancy per month for 35 years. And then when the interest rates spiked, we were fairly protected because we don't use variable rate debt, always fixed rate. So by definition, we're safe, right?
Okay.
No, that's not the case. We actually took it on the chin as well, because what happened is all of a sudden, 6% of the population now has an interest rate on their primary residence of below 4%. So if you're going to downsize from a $500,000 house to a $400,000 house, your monthly payment's actually going to go up $1,000 to $2,000, $1,500 a month. So like, why are you moving? Nobody's moving. So when the housing market screeches to a halt, the number one drivers for storage are death, divorce, downsizing, and displacement. Now, death and divorce are still happening, tragically, but moving is not. A lot of people are moving back in with their parents or whatever. Now, we're coming out of that. The last 2 quarters, we've set records across the portfolio for how many units we're leasing up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we wrote pro formas on 3% occupancy lease up, and all of a sudden we're at 1.2, 1.4, 1.6. Now, the project that we're selling next week it was a 5-year deal. It was one that we knew we were going to sell. We're actually selling it at 3 years, and we're beating our projections. So super excited about that, especially during the last 3 years. But that's just because multiple exit strategies.
Sure.
But the reality is, yes, we've been behind on a lot of our lease up projections. Now, the good news is we have so much equity because of the conversion strategy that if we, at any point in time, we can, just like this situation, we can exit it and beat our original projections to investors. So they're all happy. But you have to have that escape hatch built in with that equity from the beginning, because you don't know what the world's going to throw at you. So yeah, we've really struggled with that. Luckily, we're trending upwards and we're back on track, and we never stop doing new deals because we know that 2027, 2028 is looking really nice. But you have to have the foresight, and you have to have the investors that stick with you
Sure.
through those tough times. And the only way they do that is if you do what you say you're going to do.
So how was that communicated? How were you communicating that to investors? Like you saw like a little bit of a slowdown in lease up. How early did you start communicating that? What's the format of communication for those sorts of things?
Probably not as soon as we should have. So it's a lagging indicator, right? And things we saw the interest rates change, but that didn't really affect us because we don't use variable rate debt. But then over time, we started to see the housing market slump and our occupancy slump along with it. Because it's a lagging indicator, you kind of have to wait for that canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you see it, we're talking about it. The tendency that you see among GPs is to make excuses. In this market, this is going on, or this battery plant pulled out over here. That was supposed to be 12,000 jobs. And you can kind of like justify it. I think you have to be careful about over explaining those things, because if the reality is that the macroeconomics are trending down and you have to change course 6 months later and be like, no, we really have a problem here across the portfolio. You just spent 6 months painting yourself into a corner. So we have a monthly newsletter as well as monthly updates with video recordings on all of our projects that are under construction. Once they go from construction to certificate of occupancy and they get passed off to the asset and property management team, those switch to quarterly reports with financials as well as video of us walking through everything that we're doing. At that point, if you're coming to investors with a problem of what you are seeing in the market, you better be coming with a problem and a solution.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is what we're seeing with occupancy. This is the way that we've tripled the marketing budget. This is the way that we're bringing in a systems consultant to look at the area. This is the way that we're starting a Facebook marketing campaign from the managers of the locations, reaching out to the businesses. This is how we're taking sandwiches and muffins to the apartment complexes or new emerging businesses in the area. This is the guerrilla marketing campaign that we're starting. Like, you better be doing something. Because you can say, everybody just wait, hang with us. Self-storage is extremely resilient. It's going to bounce back. But you can't sit on your hands.
Yeah.
You have to actively be doing something to execute the business plan, because that's your side of the partnership that you signed up for with the investors.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. It's something I'm hearing a lot is like the thing that people who give you money want to see is your active management of the deal. And that means stepping in sometimes in pretty radical ways to make sure that the deal works. Because like things will change. I mean, that's kind of like given, right? Things are going to change. Do you think the fact that you're aligning, I started to ask this question earlier and then I think I got away from it, but do you think that the fact that you're aligning for long-term gains with your investors gives you some flexibility there, like that maybe the vicissitudes of the market are less like important to them because they're thinking long term, or do you still get kind of do you still get the concerned communications?
Joe, that's a great question. And I think that goes back to what you asked me earlier about like making sure that we're aligned with the right investors. Because if you are, say somebody's 30, 40 years old and you got money in the S&P 500 in a retirement account, you're not really checking that ticker tape every day. Right. But if you have somebody that's retiring next year, they are very much watching that. And so I think the important thing is, if you don't align with the right investors and you have people that tell you they're good with a long-term hold, but then something changes and their goalpost moves, there's not much you can do about that after that you started the plan, right? So the best thing, in my opinion, is candor and being very upfront and communicating about how long the business plan is going to take to be executed. And 3 years of a really tough cycle is a blip on the radar for self-storage if it's a forever hold.
Right.
But if it's somebody that has big things they're trying to accomplish for their family in 2 to 3 years, or, say you've got a liquidity event coming in 4 years and somebody's got something huge happen in 4 years and 1 month, and it's 2 years in and they're pestering you about it constantly and worried about it, that's a conversation you should have had up front and be like, listen, I don't think this is right for you. You probably shouldn't do this. And I can put you someplace else where it's probably a better fit with another operator. So the vast majority of the time, yes, what you said is absolutely true. Because we have long cycle deals, we can look past some of these intrinsic ups and downs in the market because we have a significantly longer vision. I mean, you zoom in on any stock price and it can look drastic one way or the other. But if you zoom out, maybe you're looking at a 3-day timeline. If you zoom out to 10 years, it's really going to give you a better idea of what's happening there. We want those 10-year investors. So yes, we have grace because we have a ton of equity up front and we have a long-term vision. Where we don't have grace is some of the earlier investors that we have, which some of them are very happy now because of what's happening next week. But the reality is it's been a long road to get them there with a lot of mini freakouts along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Because these people aren't doing it professionally. They don't see this every day, and you shouldn't expect them to. It's not their fault, right? So I should have done a better job up front quantifying some of those people and just make sure that, okay, this is the goalpost. The goalpost isn't going to move. We're going to execute this business plan, and strange things are going to happen, and you're entrusting us to execute that business plan. And if we get in and it's not right for them and it's not a good fit and they're upset, ultimately, that's my fault because I should have done a better job of classifying up front.
Yeah. I think that's right on for sure. I think that is something that, GPs need to be hearing, like, hey guys, like this is, yes, the investor makes the decision to send you money, but it is your job to make sure that you are setting expectations and aligning properly. Otherwise, it's like just a headache for you, a headache for everybody. So that's really great. And obviously, always good when there's a good result. Everybody's happy then, so it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's great. So, all right, I know we're a little long here, but I need to ask you one more question. So we ask LPs and GPs because we're looking for perspective here. The framing of this question is Pat's and Grills. I say that on every podcast because I don't like the way the question's framed. But what part of passive investing needs to die?
Oh, wow. Pat coming strong.
He comes in hot.
I talked to him a couple of times this week already. It's funny. This is all coming together at the same time. I love Pat. So what part of passive investing needs to die? I really love the value of community. That's really, I love when you have a lot of different eyes on something to pick things apart. And I get a little turned off by some of the anecdotal reviews of like, oh, I had a great experience with these people over here. I think what I would say probably what needs to die is the short vision that people have when looking at an operator to decide if they're a good operator or not, because there was a period of years there where you could not miss and everybody looked great and everybody looked like a genius, and you're betting how great an operator was on how great that deal went. And I think that should die. I think what you should look at is, tell me about your operation from 2022 to 2025. And if you weren't here in 2008, tell me from 2022 to 2025, how many deals did you do? How many went full cycle? And the deals that you started years before that were still in variable rate, what happened there? Because that's what I want to know about. And I know we're short on time, but there's a tale of two syndications that stands out to me. One of our investors told me about two multifamily operators that he was invested with. Both deals went sideways. One of them was like, guys, sorry, they stop communicating, and they're like, well, the new plan is to hold it for 5 to 7 extra years and hopefully get your money back. And the other one was saying, guys, this is what went wrong. This is how we got caught. This is what we could have done better. This is what we missed. This wasn't the smartest thing. This is what we're going to do to make up for this. And on our next offering, we're going to give you preferred equity and on the GP side to make up for it with this. These are the action steps we're going to take to get better. Both deals went bad, but the way that one of them communicated his words to me were, I'm trying to get my money out of this deal at 60 cents on the dollar, and I will invest with this other group until the day that I die. And I used to think I had to diversify across these different multifamily groups, and I don't. I'm going to put it all with this group because I know how they handle a bad situation. And I think what needs to die is reviewing people based upon the success of a project versus reviewing people based upon how they handled a really tough cycle in the market.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And you don't get to hear those stories that often, right? And that's part of the reason we created the platform. Like, want people to be able to share those qualitative stories publicly so that other LPs can benefit. I'm sure everybody'd like to know who that second operator was. All right, so we'll wrap up here. But before we do, for any listeners interested in learning more about Nomad Capital or connecting with you, where can they find more information?
Yep. Best way is our website, nomadcapital.us. If anybody's curious, you can email me, clint@nomadcapital.us. I will tell you who that operator is, but I'm not going to air dirty laundry out there on the podcast. So feel free to reach out, but the best option is nomadcapital.us. Happy to talk to anybody, network, and help any way I can.
Thanks, Clint. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening to the Invest Clearly podcast. To find verified investor reviews or to claim your GP profile, please visit investclearly.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a review because that's how other people find this show. Till next time, invest clearly.